We've all heard the saying, lightning never strikes twice, but in the world of 1990s animation, studios sure gave it a try. The problem? For every hit like Pokémon or Animaniacs, there were a dozen lookalikes that face-planted before they even found an audience. Welcome to our countdown of 15 cartoon copycats from the 1990s that bombed. Which forgotten show from your childhood still makes you cringe? Stick around, because one of these knockoffs might just trigger a memory you didn't want back. Hammerman, 1991. What do you get when you take the popularity of hip-hop culture, slap it on the animated superhero craze, and pray kids will tune in? You get Hammerman, the short-lived series starring none other than MC Hammer. Clearly meant to cash in on both Hammer's chart-topping fame and the success of quirky crime-fighting cartoons, the show revolved around magical talking shoes that transformed a mild-mannered youth worker into a crime-fighting hammer. Yes, really. The problem was obvious. It felt like a desperate attempt to recreate the lightning-in-a-bottle success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Captain Planet, but without the charm or storytelling. The animation was stiff, the villains cartoonishly forgettable, and the educational morals shoehorned in at the end of every episode were laughably weak. Even Hammer's own stardom couldn't save it. Audiences weren't buying it, and the series was hammered off air after only a handful of episodes. In hindsight, it stands as proof that you can't just throw pop culture trends in a blender and call it a cartoon classic. Little Shop, 1991. The Broadway musical Little Shop of Horrors had built-in brand recognition, so Fox thought, why not make it a Saturday morning cartoon? Enter Little Shop, a pastel-colored kids version, where Seymour was a teenager, Audrey II became a wisecracking, rapping sidekick, and all the dark comedy was swapped for squeaky-clean life lessons. It was clearly trying to mimic the success of quirky monster cartoons like Beetlejuice, the animated series, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The problem? Those shows balanced edge and comedy. Little Shop watered everything down until there was nothing left but bland gags and generic morals. The horror element, the soul of the original story, was gone, and what remained was a hollow, awkward shadow. Critics didn't bite, kids didn't care, and the series wilted faster than an unwatered plant. It lasted one measly season before being yanked. A cult stage classic deserved better than this lifeless attempt to ride the coattails of other weird but fun cartoons. Stone Protectors, 1993. In the early 90s, you couldn't walk through a toy aisle without seeing trolls. Those wild-haired dolls were everywhere. So naturally, someone decided, let's make them into mutant crime fighters. Thus, Stone Protectors was born, a blatant attempt to cash in on the success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by giving trolls glowing chest jewels and ninja skills. The show tried desperately to mash up trends, troll toys, superhero squads, and the rock and roll vibe of Street Sharks, but ended up with a Frankenstein's monster of cliches. Each character had a unique musical gimmick, but the plots were cookie-cutter battles against villains nobody remembers. The animation screamed low budget, and the dialogue was pure Saturday morning cheese. The action figure line bombed. The cartoon barely limped through one season, and trolls went back to being dolls instead of wannabe warriors. Today, it's remembered less as a beloved show, and more as an awkward relic of the turtle clone era. Mighty Ducks, the animated series, 1996. You know what kids loved in the early 90s? Disney's Mighty Ducks movies. You know what they didn't ask for? A sci-fi cartoon where alien ducks play hockey while fighting intergalactic villains. And yet, that's exactly what Disney delivered. The animated Mighty Ducks had almost nothing in common with the films. Instead of a ragtag underdog hockey team, we got anthropomorphic space ducks battling an evil reptilian overlord between slap shots. Clearly, this was Disney's attempt to mash together Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, and its own sports brand. The result? Confused audiences and a messy tone that couldn't decide if it was parody or action epic. While the animation was slick, the show didn't resonate. It aired for one short season and was quickly forgotten, except by die-hard Disney afternoon fans. In hindsight, it's a perfect example of how slapping a familiar name on a bizarre copycat premise doesn't guarantee kids will stick around. Rovers, 1996. By the mid-1990s, Warner Brothers was on fire. Animaniacs and Tiny Toon Adventures had become instant classics, so expectations were sky-high for whatever came next. Enter Rovers, a series about ordinary pet dogs transformed into humanoid superheroes who fought crime while dropping wisecracks. If that sounds like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossed with SWAT cats, you've already cracked the formula. The premise wasn't terrible. Talking dogs saving the day had potential, but the execution felt recycled. The humor leaned on endless dog puns, the slapstick was tired, and the villains were bland enough to forget mid-episode. Compared to the sharp wit of Animaniacs or the stylish action of SWAT cats, Rovers seemed like the leftovers of a trend already past its prime. To its credit, the show tried slipping in tongue-in-cheek jokes for older viewers, but they weren't enough to balance the generic action beats. Even die-hard Warner Brothers fans shrugged it off. With weak ratings and little merchandise support, the series was pulled after just 13 episodes. Today, Rovers lives on mostly as a trivia tidbit, a reminder that even studios riding high can stumble when they chase a trend instead of setting one. Widget the World Watcher. 1990 to 1992. Environmental cartoons were all the rage in the early 90s. With Captain Planet leading the charge, every studio wanted their own eco-friendly hero. Enter Widget the World Watcher, a purple alien who came to Earth to stop pollution and bad guys ruining the environment. Sounds noble, right? Except the execution turned it into a shallow copy of better eco-tunes. Widget could shapeshift into different forms to fight villains, but the show's environmental lessons were delivered with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The animation looked cheap, the villains were one note, and Widget himself was more annoying than inspiring. Compare that to Captain Planet, which at least had a dynamic cast and some memorable moments, and it's no wonder Widget faded fast. Sure, it ran for 2 seasons, but that was more a result of syndication deals than popularity. Critics and kids alike dismissed it as forgettable, and unlike Captain Planet, it never sparked merchandise, parodies, or cultural staying power. Instead, it sits in the bargain bin of 1990s copycat cartoons, a reminder that you can't just slap an environmental message on weak storytelling and expect it to save the day. The Bots Master 1993 to 1994. In the wake of Transformers and Voltron, robot-themed shows were everywhere, and The Bots Master was DIC Entertainment's attempt to cash in. The premise followed genius inventor Ziv ZZ Zoolander and his army of robots battling against an evil corporate overlord. On paper, it had potential, but in practice it played like a pale imitation of Transformers, with clunky storytelling and cookie-cutter plots. The gimmick was 3D sequences that required special glasses. While that sounded futuristic, in reality it was just a headache, literally. The animation dipped whenever the gimmick kicked in, and kids quickly lost interest. Instead of creating the next generation of robot heroes, the show ended up as a footnote. Unlike Transformers, which built a massive franchise, or Power Rangers, which nailed the toy synergy, The Bots Master flopped in ratings and toy sales. It only ran a single season before vanishing. Today, it's remembered mainly by die-hard collectors and YouTube reviewers digging up 90s obscurities. A clear case of following the leader instead of blazing its own trail. Double Dragon, 1993 to 1994. Video game adaptations were booming in the early 90s, thanks to the success of Super Mario Bros. Super Show and Sonic the Hedgehog. Riding the wave, producers greenlit Double Dragon, based on the hit arcade brawler. But instead of gritty street fights, audiences got a sanitized Saturday morning cartoon with mystical powers, awkward humor, and characters that barely resembled their game counterparts. The twin brothers, Billy and Jimmy Lee, were turned into brightly costumed, moral-preaching heroes with a magic sword gimmick. Gone was the raw, street-brawling energy that made the games iconic. Instead, kids got recycled tropes from He-Man and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Fans of the game were disappointed, casual viewers were confused, and the ratings tanked. Merchandising failed, too. The action figures sat on shelves, gathering dust. The show limped through 2 short seasons before disappearing. Meanwhile, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat cartoons, flawed as they were, at least felt closer to their source material. Double Dragon is remembered today as one of the most blatant examples of watering down a brand until it's unrecognizable. Wild West C.O.W. Boys of Moo Mesa, 1992 to 1993. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles spawned countless imitators, but few were as bizarre as Wild West C.O.W. Boys of Moo Mesa. Yes, the acronym stood for Cowboys of Moo Mesa, because the heroes were literal anthropomorphic cows dressed as Old West sheriffs. If you're thinking turtles in cowboy hats, you're not wrong. The formula was shameless. Animal-human hybrids with martial arts skills fighting cartoonish villains in a themed setting. The writing leaned heavily on cow puns, the villains were unmemorable, and the plots felt like reskinned Turtles episodes with a western coat of paint. Despite some colorful animation, the show lasted only 2 seasons before fading into obscurity. Unlike the Turtles, which spawned movies, merchandise, and cultural dominance, the C.O.W. boys never broke out beyond their niche. Kids liked the idea for about 5 minutes, then went back to Leonardo and Michelangelo. Today, the show is remembered mainly as an oddity, a punchline in the long list of failed Turtles clones. Proof that no matter how many hats you put on it, a cow just isn't a ninja turtle. Skeleton Warriors, 1994 to 1995. Dark fantasy was having a serious moment in the mid-90s. Gargoyles showed kids could handle brooding heroes, gothic settings, and layered storytelling. Skeleton Warriors, however, tried to ride that wave and promptly sank. The premise was straightforward. Armored heroes known as the Legion of Light squared off against Baron Dark and his army of skeletal villains. The designs looked like rejected He-Man figures crossed with G.I. Joe, and the tone practically shouted, "Look how edgy we are!" But edge without substance doesn't get you far. The characters lacked depth, the dialogue was clunky, and the plots were so predictable they felt like extended toy commercials. While Gargoyles delivered emotional arcs and striking atmosphere, Skeleton Warriors offered shiny armor and not much else. The toy line, which was clearly the driving force behind the show, bombed at retail. Ratings were equally dismal, and after just 13 episodes, the series was buried in the cartoon graveyard. By then, fans of dark animation already had Batman, the animated series, and Gargoyles, shows that balanced style with substance. Today, Skeleton Warriors survives only as a relic of the copy-first, think-later approach, proving that Gothic aesthetics alone can't carry a franchise. Hurricanes, 1993 to 1997. Sports-themed cartoons always walked a fine line in the 90s. Hurricanes tried to blend the popularity of soccer with the team-centric action formula of shows like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Captain Planet. The premise? A global soccer team that doubled as globe-trotting adventurers, saving the world from villains in between matches. On paper, it sounded like a perfect international hit, Soccer is huge worldwide, but the execution felt clumsy. Episodes leaned more on cliché villain plots than actual sports, and the cast was so bland that few viewers could remember anyone's name. Compare that to Captain Planet, where each character represented a clear personality and power. Here, everyone blended together. While the series lasted longer than most on this list, running 4 seasons, it never broke through in ratings or toy sales. It also lacked the humor and heart that made Turtles or Animaniacs shine. Instead, Hurricanes drifted into obscurity, overshadowed by shows with stronger hooks. Today, it's a trivia note in sports cartoon history, not a beloved 90s classic. Battletoads, 1992. Following the arcade and NES hit Battletoads, producers were convinced they had the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on their hands. The setup was eerily similar. 3 mutated amphibian heroes with radical attitudes battling evil space villains. It screamed, "Turtle clone," right down to the neon colors and slang-heavy dialogue. The problem? The video game was already notorious for its brutal difficulty, and the cartoon failed to translate that into anything compelling. Instead, it leaned into slapstick gags and predictable plots, with the Toads spouting catchphrases that felt forced even in the 90s. The pilot aired, but the show was canceled almost immediately after. No full season, no lasting legacy, just a failed attempt to turn a cult game into a multi-platform franchise. Meanwhile, the Turtles continued dominating pop culture. Battletoads, the cartoon, became yet another casualty of the copycat craze. Today, it's remembered mostly as a what could have been, living on only in retro gaming circles and collectors' VHS tapes. Bruno the Kid, 1996 to 1997. With James Bond Jr. trying to capture spy thriller cool for kids, it was only a matter of time before another studio tried the same trick. Enter Bruno the Kid, an animated series starring a 10-year-old secret agent voiced by none other than Bruce Willis. Yes, Die Hard himself was lending his voice to a spy cartoon. The gimmick was strong, celebrity voice talent, gadgets galore, and a kid saves the world setup. But beyond the novelty of Willis, the show felt like a watered-down copy of James Bond Jr. and Inspector Gadget. The plots were formulaic, the villains generic, and Bruno's wisecracks quickly got old. Despite a hefty marketing push and some international sales, Bruno the Kid fizzled. Audiences didn't connect with it. Critics dismissed it as shallow, and even Bruce Willis's star power couldn't save it. The series ran for 1 short season before disappearing. Today, it's more of a curiosity than a classic, a reminder that slapping a celebrity name on a copycat cartoon doesn't guarantee success. Avenger Penguins, 1993 to 1994. By the mid-1990s, the radical animal team trend was gasping for air. Avenger Penguins, produced by Cosgrove Hall, the studio behind Danger Mouse, was their attempt to parody the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles craze while still cashing in on it. The result? A trio of leather jacket-wearing penguins who rode motorcycles and battled a villain named Caractacus P. Doom. The tone was meant to be edgy and satirical, but it came off as confused. Kids didn't get the parody, and older audiences weren't interested in watching penguins ride Harleys. The animation looked fine, but the humor was uneven, and the plots felt like second-hand Turtles episodes with weaker punchlines. While it lasted 2 short seasons in the UK, it never made much impact internationally. Compared to Biker Mice from Mars or even Street Sharks, Avenger Penguins just didn't have the staying power. Today, it's remembered as a quirky footnote, a copycat trying to mock the very genre it belonged to, but falling flat in the process. King Arthur and the Knights of Justice. 1992 to 1993. At number 1, we land on a cartoon that tried to blend medieval legend with Saturday morning action tropes: King Arthur and the Knights of Justice. The setup was ambitious. A modern football team magically zapped back to Camelot, taking the place of the original Knights of the Round Table and battling Morgana's evil forces. On paper, it sounded epic. In practice, it played more like a clunky mashup of Thundercats and He-Man. The characters were barely fleshed-out jocks with interchangeable personalities, while the dialogue was so corny it bordered on parody. Unlike He-Man, which embraced its camp factor, Knights of Justice took itself painfully seriously. That tonal mismatch left kids scratching their heads. Were they supposed to laugh, cheer, or learn history with shoulder pads? Merchandising didn't help. The toy line tanked, offering little incentive for networks to keep it alive. Though the animation occasionally delivered flashy battle scenes, the overall storytelling lacked spark. After 2 short seasons, the show vanished from schedules, remembered only by those who caught its odd run. Today, it's considered the crown jewel of failed 90s copycats, a bold but misguided swing that proves even big ideas can crumble without the right balance. And there you have it, 15 cartoon copycats from the 90s that tried to ride the coattails of bigger hits and ended up crashing instead. Some were bizarre, some were forgettable, and a few were just plain painful to watch. Did we miss one of your least favorite copycats from the decade? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more dives into the weird and wonderful world of animation. After all, sometimes the flops are just as fascinating as the hits.